Sheylla Cabrera thought the doorbell camera would keep her safe. Instead, it recorded her final moments, when neighbors found her groceries still on the porch and her phone missing. The only clue left behind was a few seconds of grainy footage that showed Sheylla vanishing right before her own front door. What police uncovered next would expose a twisted obsession, a hidden camera no one knew existed, and a killer who might still be watching. It started like any other Saturday in the small suburban town of Willow Creek. The morning sun had barely touched the tops of the trees, and the quiet streets were still. Families watered lawns, kids rode their bikes, and security cameras blinked lazily on doorsteps. Among the rows of neat houses was a pale blue two-story home that belonged to 29-year-old Sheylla Cabrera. She was the kind of person who valued her privacy but was friendly enough to wave to her neighbors. She lived alone, worked from home as a freelance graphic designer, and rarely stayed out late. Nothing about her life suggested danger. But that illusion would be shattered by a single piece of doorbell footage that would soon make national news. The video begins at 6:54 p.m. on October 14th. It's a little shaky, as if the wind brushed past the camera. Sheylla walks up her driveway holding a brown grocery bag in her left hand, her phone in her right. Her car door slams behind her, and she glances over her shoulder once before reaching for her keys. Everything seems normal and it isn't. She stops suddenly, turning her head toward the end of the driveway. Her expression changes from calm to startled. Her grip loosens, and the bag drops to the ground. The items spill out. An apple rolls across the porch. A bottle of juice tips over, leaking onto the steps. Then, without warning, Sheylla disappears from view. For several seconds, the camera captures only stillness. The porch light flickers, as if reacting to something. In the distance, a faint sound, maybe a car door slamming or a muffled cry, can be heard. Then the recording ends. At first, no one knew what they were watching. It looked ordinary enough that most people wouldn't have thought twice about it. But when Sheylla failed to show up for work the next day and her phone went straight to voicemail, the footage took on a chilling new meaning. Her next-door neighbor, a retired teacher named Mrs. Palmer, was the first to notice something was wrong. She saw the grocery bag still lying on the porch early the next morning. Thinking Sheylla might have gone on a trip, she decided to wait. But by afternoon, nothing had changed. The groceries were still there, and Sheylla's car hadn't moved. Worried, Mrs. Palmer called the police. Officers arrived shortly after 2 p.m. They found no signs of forced entry, no broken windows, and no struggle inside the home. Everything looked untouched, except for a single overturned chair in the hallway. Her keys were missing, her wallet was still inside her purse, and her laptop sat open on the kitchen counter. The last thing she had typed was a simple message in an email draft. Finally home. Detectives pulled data from the doorbell camera, and that's when they saw the video. They watched it over and over again, frame by frame. When slowed down, they noticed something almost invisible, at first a dark shadow moving near the edge of the driveway just before Sheylla vanished. It passed too quickly to make out a shape, but it was enough to confirm someone else had been there. By that evening, the footage was circulating among investigators, who debated whether the shadow could be a person or simply a trick of light. But one small detail made them pause. Right before Sheylla dropped her bag, her eyes didn't move randomly. They locked onto a fixed point, as if she saw something or someone she recognized. If you were in her place, walking home on an ordinary evening, would you have noticed it? Would you have sensed something wrong before it was too late? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And if stories like this keep you up at night, make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss a new case. As news of her disappearance spread, locals began checking their own security cameras. Within 24 hours, police collected over a dozen recordings from nearby houses. Most showed nothing unusual except one taken from a home directly across the street. In the reflection of Shella's car window, a faint silhouette appeared. It was standing just a few feet behind her, motionless. The image was too blurry to identify, but its presence was undeniable. Neighbors were shaken. This was a safe, quiet neighborhood where people left their doors unlocked during the day. The idea that someone could vanish in plain sight, right under a security camera, seemed impossible. But that was exactly what had happened. As detectives searched the area, they found one more unsettling clue. About 50 yards from Shella's home, near a row of hedges, a single black glove was discovered. It was wet from dew and appeared recently dropped. There were no fingerprints inside it. That night, while investigators continued their work, the doorbell camera at Shella's home activated again. A motion alert pinged on her phone, which was still missing, but the footage automatically uploaded to the cloud. The camera showed a brief flicker of light near the driveway, followed by what looked like a passing car slowing down. For a moment, a shadow crossed the porch, again the same size and shape as before. Then the screen went dark by the end of the first day. Detectives knew one thing for certain. This wasn't a random disappearance. Someone had been waiting for Sheylla Cabrera. Someone who knew exactly when she'd come home and how to avoid every camera but one. Detectives wasted no time diving into Sheylla Cabrera's life. On the surface, it looked simple and quiet. Sheylla was a freelance graphic designer who worked from home, often taking on small projects for local businesses. She paid her bills on time, rarely traveled, and had no criminal record. Friends described her as creative but cautious. She wasn't the type to take risks or attract trouble. But as investigators dug deeper, they found small hints that her life might not have been as peaceful as it seemed. A week before she disappeared, Sheylla had made a cryptic post on her social media account. It read, "Does anyone else feel like someone's watching them lately?" Most people brushed it off as a joke, but detectives didn't. They began retracing her last 24 hours, hoping to piece together what happened between her grocery trip and the moment she vanished. Store surveillance showed Sheylla arriving at the local market at 6:31 p.m. She smiled politely at the cashier, paid for a few items, and left within 10 minutes. The receipt in her purse matched the timestamp perfectly. From the store to her house was a short 10-minute drive, but the doorbell camera recorded her arrival at 6:54 p.m. That meant there were 4 unaccounted minutes. For minutes that didn't fit. Detectives requested footage from nearby traffic cameras, and after hours of reviewing recordings, they found something strange. At 6:49 p.m., Sheylla's car appeared at a stop sign just 2 blocks from her home. Behind her was another vehicle, a dark-colored sedan with no front license plate. The driver's face was hidden by the car's visor, and when Sheylla's car moved forward, the sedan followed closely. Both vehicles disappeared from view seconds later. The camera caught one last flicker of the sedan's headlights before it shut them off entirely. Police issued a notice asking the public for information about the car. Within a day, tips began flooding in. Several residents claimed to have seen a similar vehicle parked near the entrance to a wooded lot, 2 streets away from Sheylla's home. One person even mentioned that the same car had been spotted late at night idling near the cul-de-sac where Sheylla lived. Detectives checked the lot and found fresh tire tracks in the dirt, but nothing else. No fingerprints. No footprints. No evidence left behind. As investigators worked the case, they discovered something else unsettling. 2 days before she vanished, a delivery driver had dropped off a package at Sheylla's house. During his routine stop, he noticed something a small black lens inside the porch light, pointing toward the front door. At the time, he assumed it was part of a security system. But when detectives inspected the porch after Sheylla's disappearance, the light fixture was empty. The camera inside it was gone. That missing camera became the focus of the investigation. Who had installed it, and what had it recorded? Detectives pulled the original home security system's purchase records. Sheylla had ordered her doorbell camera directly from a well-known brand just 6 months earlier. But there was no record of her buying an additional camera. It wasn't part of her setup. Someone else had put it there. Investigators expanded their search beyond the immediate neighborhood, checking pawn shops, electronic stores, and online marketplaces for similar miniature cameras. It turned out these specific models were often sold to private contractors and small security firms. One of those firms, a local company called Horizon Safe Systems, had once hired Sheylla as a freelance designer to help with their branding. Detectives wasted no time diving into Sheylla Cabrera's life. On the surface, it looked simple and quiet. Sheylla was a freelance graphic designer who worked from home, often taking on small projects for local businesses. She paid her bills on time, rarely traveled, and had no criminal record. Friends described her as creative but cautious. She wasn't the type to take risks or attract trouble. But as investigators dug deeper, they found small hints that her life might not have been as peaceful as it seemed. A week before she disappeared, Sheylla had made a cryptic post on her social media account. It read, "Does anyone else feel like someone's watching them lately?" Most people brushed it off as a joke, but detectives didn't. They began retracing her last 24 hours, hoping to piece together what happened between her grocery trip and the moment she vanished. Store surveillance showed Sheylla arriving at the local market at 6:31 p.m. She smiled politely at the cashier, paid for a few items, and left within 10 minutes. The receipt in her purse matched the timestamp perfectly. From the store to her house was a short 10-minute drive, but the doorbell camera recorded her arrival at 6:54 p.m. That meant there were 4 unaccounted minutes. For minutes that didn't fit. Detectives requested footage from nearby traffic cameras, and after hours of reviewing recordings, they found something strange. At 6:49 p.m., Sheylla's car appeared at a stop sign just 2 blocks from her home. Behind her was another vehicle, a dark-colored sedan with no front license plate. The driver's face was hidden by the car's visor, and when Sheylla's car moved forward, the sedan followed closely. Both vehicles disappeared from view seconds later. The camera caught one last flicker of the sedan's headlights before it shut them off entirely. Police issued a notice asking the public for information about the car. Within a day, tips began flooding in. Several residents claimed to have seen a similar vehicle parked near the entrance to a wooded lot, 2 streets away from Sheylla's home. One person even mentioned that the same car had been spotted late at night, idling near the cul-de-sac where Sheylla lived. Detectives checked the lot and found fresh tire tracks in the dirt, but nothing else. No fingerprints. No footprints. No evidence left behind. As investigators worked the case, they discovered something else unsettling. 2 days before she vanished, a delivery driver had dropped off a package at Sheylla's house. During his routine stop, he noticed something a small black lens inside the porch light, pointing toward the front door. At the time, he assumed it was part of a security system. But when detectives inspected the porch after Sheylla's disappearance, the light fixture was empty. The camera inside it was gone. That missing camera became the focus of the investigation. Who had installed it, and what had it recorded? Detectives pulled the original home security system's purchase records. Sheylla had ordered her doorbell camera directly from a well-known brand just 6 months earlier. But there was no record of her buying an additional camera. It wasn't part of her setup. Someone else had put it there. Investigators expanded their search beyond the immediate neighborhood, checking pawn shops, electronic stores, and online marketplaces for similar miniature cameras. It turned out these specific models were often sold to private contractors and small security firms. One of those firms, a local company called Horizon Safe Systems, had once hired Sheylla as a freelance designer to help with their branding. Detectives visited the office. The owner confirmed that Sheylla had worked on their logo design 3 months earlier but never met most of the staff in person. Payments were handled remotely through email and invoices. However, one employee's name came up repeatedly during questioning. Elias Dorne. He had been part of the design project and had apparently exchanged several direct messages with Sheylla about her work. When officers looked into his background, red flags appeared. Elias had been fired just 2 months ago after complaints of inappropriate behavior toward female clients. He was described as obsessive, often taking his work home and collecting footage for research. When police went to speak with him at his listed address, they found his apartment empty. His phone was disconnected, and his car was gone. It was as if he had vanished the moment Sheylla did. Detectives secured a warrant to search his residence. Inside, they found boxes filled with electronics hidden cameras, flash drives, and hard drives labeled with random street names. Many of the drives were encrypted, but technicians managed to unlock one. What they found sent chills through the investigation team. The folder contained video files, dozens of them, showing the front doors of different houses around Willow Creek. Most were short. Motion-activated clips, people leaving for work, families coming home, deliveries being made. But one folder stood out. It was labeled SC. Inside were clips of Sheylla Cabrera. She appeared on camera at different times, bringing in packages, watering plants, unlocking her door. It was clear someone had been recording her for weeks. The realization hit hard. This wasn't random. Someone had studied her movements, her schedule, her habits. Every step had been watched. If you're watching this right now, ask yourself, how safe would you feel knowing someone could see everything you do outside your own home? Do you check your cameras often? Would you even notice if there was one more lens staring back at you? Comment below what you'd do if you discovered someone had been watching you by the time the evidence was collected. Police were convinced that Elias Dorne wasn't just connected to Sheylla's disappearance, he had orchestrated it. But finding him would be another story entirely. And when they finally uncovered what was left behind in his apartment, it became clear that Elias hadn't just been spying on one woman. He had been watching an entire neighborhood. The missing camera found in the drainage ditch confirmed what investigators already suspected. Sheylla Cabrera hadn't been a random target. Someone had been following her, learning her every move, and capturing it all on video. When the memory card was recovered, detectives sent it to the lab immediately. The files were damaged by water, but digital forensics managed to restore most of them. The footage that played out on the monitor was disturbing. It showed Sheylla in her daily routine, filmed from a distance that felt uncomfortably close. She was seen unlocking her front door, taking out the trash, watering her plants, and once, sitting on her porch reading a book. The camera had recorded these clips across several days. Whoever had installed it had been watching her long before she vanished. Investigators cross-referenced the timestamps with the activity on Sheylla's own security system. The porch light camera had been placed directly above her regular doorbell camera, giving the stalker a perfect vantage point without being noticed. It wasn't sophisticated work, it was simple, sneaky, and effective. The type of thing a person with basic technical knowledge could pull off. That narrowed the list of suspects considerably, and all roads led back to one name: Elias Dorne. Police revisited Horizon Safe Systems, the company where Elias had once worked, hoping to uncover something concrete. His former boss described him as talented but obsessive about surveillance. He often bragged about understanding the psychology of fear, how to make someone feel watched without ever touching them. One co-worker recalled Elias spending hours watching old doorbell footage for patterns. No one had thought much of it at the time, but now it sounded like practice for something darker. A search warrant for his apartment had already been executed, but detectives returned to examine every detail. In a small locked drawer, they discovered something that investigators had overlooked: a black notebook filled with handwritten notes and sketches of houses. Each address had dates next to it, along with strange observations like morning routine, 8:12 a.m., or lights off at 11:47 p.m. One of those addresses belonged to Sheylla Cabrera. Next to her name, Elias had drawn a small symbol circle with a dot in the center. Detectives realized it was the same design as the logo for Horizon Safe Systems. The deeper they went into the apartment, the worse it got. They found a corkboard covered in printed photos taken from security footage, each one showing different homes around Willow Creek. Some of the pictures had red X marks drawn over them. At first, no one could tell what the marks meant. But when detectives compared the photos to police records, they discovered a disturbing connection. Two of the houses with red X's had reported incidents of trespassing in the past 6 months. One homeowner even mentioned seeing a man sitting in a car outside late at night, watching their driveway. It became clear that Elias Dorne hadn't just been stalking. She was one of many. Police now classified the case as a targeted abduction and began a full manhunt for Elias. His car, a dark blue sedan, had been flagged across multiple states. But as days turned into weeks, there were no sightings. It was as though he had disappeared without a trace. Detectives began to fear the worst, that Sheylla was gone, and Elias had fled for good. Then, a break came from an unexpected place. A local construction worker cleaning up near an abandoned property just outside town found something strange: a small black box half buried in the dirt. Inside were several memory cards labeled by street names, just like the ones found in Elias's apartment. One was labeled Cabrera. The footage from that card was clearer than the rest. The videos were from different days and angles, all focused on Sheylla's house. The final clip had a timestamp from the night she disappeared. It showed the view from across the street, where someone had hidden a camera inside a parked car. In the reflection of the window, investigators could see a man's outline, tall, wearing a dark jacket, and standing near the end of the driveway. The video ended abruptly, but one final frame showed something haunting: a blurred close-up of Sheylla's face. illuminated by her porch light, eyes wide in shock. Behind her shoulder, barely visible, was the faint outline of a man's hand reaching forward. Forensics analysts enhanced the image, and what they found confirmed everyone's worst fear. On the man's wrist was a distinctive tattoo, small red triangle. Records showed that Elias Dorne had that exact tattoo. The connection was undeniable. Police issued a nationwide alert, distributing Elias's photo and vehicle description to the public. But there was one more discovery that left investigators shaken. On the wall inside his apartment, near his desk, was a symbol drawn in red marker. It looked like a doorbell camera lens with 3 words written beneath it. "She saw me." The phrase became a grim reminder of how this case had unfolded. The one thing meant to protect Sheylla, her doorbell camera, had also recorded her. Final terrifying moments. Detectives now faced a haunting realization. Elias hadn't hidden from cameras. He had used them as part of his game. He knew how to manipulate them, how to step just out of frame, how to make it seem like he was never there. If you're watching this, think about your own home for a second. How many cameras do you have watching your front door, your driveway, or your yard? What if someone else was watching through them too? Let us know what you think in the comments below. The discovery of the memory cards changed everything. Elias wasn't a random stalker. He was calculated, patient, and deliberate. Detectives realized they weren't just chasing a suspect anymore. They were chasing someone who had mastered the art of disappearing in plain sight. 2 weeks after Sheylla Cabrera's disappearance, a man hiking along a wooded trail about 10 miles outside of Willow Creek noticed something strange. Near the edge of a shallow creek bed, he saw what looked like part of a blue tarp sticking out from under a pile of leaves. At first, he thought it was trash, but when he moved closer, he realized the ground beneath it had been disturbed. He called 911 immediately. When police arrived and began digging, their worst fears were confirmed. Beneath the tarp was the body of Sheylla Cabrera. The medical examiner's report revealed that she had been strangled, likely on the same night she disappeared. There were no defensive wounds, suggesting she had been taken by surprise. Her phone and keys were missing, and a small piece of black tape was found stuck to her wrist, the same kind of adhesive used to mount miniature cameras. That detail told investigators everything they needed to know. The same man who had been filming her had also been the one to end her life, nearby. Search teams found the remains of a burned-out vehicle. It was barely recognizable, but after running, the Ving police confirmed it was the same dark sedan seen following Sheylla's car on traffic camera footage. The fire had destroyed most of the evidence, but in the trunk they discovered melted fragments of a laptop, memory cards, and a charred notebook with faint handwriting that appeared to match Elias Dorne's. He was now officially the prime suspect in a homicide investigation. Despite nationwide alerts and hundreds of tips, Elias remained missing. The story spread across the country, covered by major news networks and online forums. People dissected the footage, argued theories, and even visited Willow Creek, hoping to see the infamous house for themselves. But for the investigators still working the case, there was no closure, just an endless list of unanswered questions. Where had Elias gone? How long had he been planning this? And why Sheylla detectives believed the answer might lie in his obsession with surveillance. They began reanalyzing everything taken from his apartment, this time focusing on the pattern of his recordings. The memory cards he labeled weren't random, they followed a path, moving from one neighborhood to another, almost like a map. Each address corresponded to a home with a woman living alone. Sheylla had been the last one added to the list. The other women were contacted, and some admitted to strange occurrences they'd brushed off at the time. Motion alerts at odd hours, mail tampered with, or cars parked too long outside their homes. None had ever reported it, and now they wished they had. One chilling detail stood out. In a recovered email draft saved on Elias's laptop, investigators found a single unsent message addressed to Sheylla's email. The subject line read, "You don't see me, but I see you." The body of the message was blank. Even with overwhelming evidence, the case hit a wall. Elias Dorne had simply vanished. His bank accounts were untouched, his phone inactive, and his car destroyed. For months, the investigation stalled. Then, nearly a year after Sheylla's death, something happened that reignited the entire case. A new family moved into Sheylla's old home, a young couple with 2 small children. Like most people, they installed a new doorbell camera as part of their home security. For a few weeks, everything was quiet. Then, one night around 3 a.m., the camera captured motion at the end of the driveway. The homeowner checked the alert on his phone and saw a figure standing just beyond the light's reach. The man didn't move. He stood perfectly still for nearly half a minute, facing the house. Then he stepped forward, slowly, until his face became partially visible. The porch light illuminated a faint smile, a sharp jawline, and eyes that looked directly into the camera. He mouthed something, but there was no sound. After a few seconds, he turned around and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. When police reviewed the footage, they couldn't confirm the man's identity, but those who had worked the original case recognized the same unsettling expression. The eyes, the build, and that faint smirk, it all looked like Elias Dorne. The timestamp on the recording marked exactly 1 year since Sheylla Cabrera's death. Investigators searched the area again, combing through nearby woods and questioning residents, but no trace of Elias was found. Some believed the footage was a cruel prank, maybe someone trying to exploit the tragedy. Others, including several detectives on the case, weren't so sure. The figure on that video didn't seem random. It seemed intentional, almost like a message. In the months that followed, the neighborhood changed. People added more lights, more locks, more cameras. But the eerie truth lingered. No matter how many cameras were installed, safety wasn't guaranteed. The very technology meant to protect Sheylla had documented her final moments, and maybe even invited her killer to return. The footage from that night remains part of the official case file, stored along with every piece of evidence investigators ever collected. It serves as both a warning and a haunting mystery that refuses to fade. Elias Dorne was never found, no remains ever recovered, and no confirmed sightings since. But even now, residents of Willow Creek say they sometimes get motion alerts late at night, showing nothing but a faint shadow moving across the street, just out of view. If you're still watching, ask yourself, do you really know who's watching you? How many cameras point at your home right now? Could someone else be on the other side of that lens, waiting for you to look away? Comment below what you think happened to Elias Dorne. Was he ever caught, or is he still out there, hiding in plain sight? Remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more chilling true crime stories. Because sometimes, the scariest moments aren't caught by accident, they're recorded on purpose.